YouTube, Jessica here, and I am making this video today because I have some exciting news. I got my surgery. So I've wanted to make this video a couple days now, but I have been on a lot of heavy painkillers, morphine, hydromorphone, which have had me not really feeling myself. I've been quite out of it, quite loopy. And even when I've felt like I'm not all that bad, my speech has been really slow and slurred. So today is the first day that I'm really feeling myself and feeling up to filming this. I got the surgery on Thursday and today is Tuesday, so I am 5 days post-op. So surgery day itself started out a little weird. I was expecting to go in at 11:45 in the morning, but I got woken up at about 8 a.m. with a phone call from the surgeon's assistant asking if I could come in as soon as possible. So I kind of rushed out of bed, had a quick shower, and collected all the things I thought I would need at the hospital. And my husband drove me down. Luckily, we're only about a 20-minute drive from the hospital. So I got all checked in and got settled into the pre-op area. And I just want to say everyone there was amazing. They were all just great, and they were really like warm and caring and really made me feel like they wanted me to be comfortable, and like, you know, it wasn't just like I was getting churned through some kind of like factory line. Like they really cared about how I was feeling. So the first concern that came up when I was in pre-op, sorry, my cat kind of trying to photobomb here. The first concern that came up in pre-op was that I wasn't going to be getting any general anesthesia, any anesthesia at all really. What I was going to be getting was just a nerve block, which involves the anesthesiologist injecting right about here using ultrasound to guide the needle that numbs the entire arm. You can't feel anything, you can't move it. It's just like this floppy limb hanging there. And that had been the plan. I knew that was the plan, but I do have a fear of needles. I think if you've watched any of my videos before, I've mentioned this. So the anesthesiologist wasn't sure how well I would tolerate having, you know, a needle yay long. Like I saw it, it was quite a long needle going into my shoulder and having to, you know, wiggle around in there to get the different spots that he needs to inject into. So we talked it over, and I let him know that as long as I could have even just a mild sedation before the needle went in, I would be fine. The sedation they were giving me was going to have to go in through an IV, and again, I had been prepared for that. So I figured, you know, I'll have to get the IV, that'll be stressful, I might panic a little bit, but then the medicine will go in, I'll be calm, and after that, it'll all be fine. So the anesthesiologist was great. He distracted me while his nurse was putting the IV into my hand. So he was talking to me about, you know, the kind of standard doctor spiel they give you before a procedure. You know, this is the risks of a nerve block. These are the benefits of a nerve block. This is why we feel it's a better alternative to general anesthesia. And I was trying my best to focus on him as the nurse was fiddling around with my hand. And I felt the kind of small poke. And I tensed up a little bit, but I was like, okay, that wasn't bad. Like, all done. I've got my IV. And then the nurse, you know, just as I was congratulating myself, going like, yeah, I got through the one injection that I'll need to get to before the sedation comes. The nurse goes, oh, good, you did so well. Like, that was the freezing before the IV comes in. And I was kind of like, no, I thought that was the IV. Like, but whatever, so they numbed my hand, and the anesthesiologist kept talking to me as the nurse put in the actual IV. And that, like, I didn't panic or cry exactly, but I was hooked up to the monitors for like my blood pressure and my heart rate and my oxygen levels. And when he put the IV in, my blood pressure did drop quite a bit, which kind of worried the anesthesiologist for a minute. But they laid me down. They kind of, you know, put the bed down, And the anesthesiologist put in the mild sedative they were giving me, and my blood pressure stabilized on its own. So he was quite happy that he didn't have to do anything to fix my blood pressure. Getting the IV, in addition to dropping my blood pressure, had also just made me start feeling really dizzy and nauseous, like how I typically would feel when I got a needle. So after that minute or two, when the sedative hit and I started feeling much better, it was all fine. I was great. And then they started getting ready to do the nerve block. The anesthesiologist put in a local sedative around the skin of the shoulder so that I wouldn't feel the needle as much. Although, to be honest, like the sedative they had given me, I wasn't asleep. I wasn't like unaware of what was going on. I was perfectly lucid, like I can remember everything. But there was enough sedative in me that I didn't really care. So he did the local anesthetic, and then he did the ultrasound guided injection of the actual nerve block. And that was fine. It took maybe, I want to say like a minute or two for him to inject everywhere he needed to. And then they kind of, they're like, wow, you did so much better than we thought you would, given how afraid you are of needles. And they kind of tucked me in with an extra blanket and left for the, it takes about half an hour for the nerve block to kick in. There was one amusing moment where like I could slowly feel that the nerve block was kicking in, because like, after they walked away, I wiggled my fingers and I was like, okay, so I can still move. And then a minute later, I'd try wiggling again and I would be able to wiggle 3 of my fingers, but the other 2 wouldn't move. So it kind of, progressed slowly. I'd be like, oh, look, I've lost another finger. So eventually I just lost all movement in my arm and I kind of forgot about it. Like I wasn't watching it or paying attention or anything. At one point, the anesthesiologist came back by to see how I was doing. And he's like, oh my God, your arm. And I hadn't realized my arm had I was lying down in bed, but my arm had flopped off the side of the bed and was just dangling there. And I hadn't noticed because I had no feeling in the limb. So he, picked up my arm and kind of tucked it under my thigh so that it wouldn't go anywhere again. And I know the drugs must have been affecting me because for some reason I found that hilarious. Like I couldn't stop giggling, and I had my phone and I was texting my husband and my sister and my mom and everyone my arm fell off the bed and I didn't notice, so funny. So I know that the drugs were affecting me. My arm was getting quite sore sitting at the table, so I've moved to the bedroom now. The last thing they did kind of before we actually got to surgery itself was the anesthesiologist injected me with a course of antibiotics. And that was surprisingly uncomfortable, borderline painful. When he was injecting the sedative in through the IV, I didn't feel that at all. If he hadn't been speaking to me, I wouldn't have known he was injecting me with anything. When he was injecting the antibiotic, I don't know if it was a thicker medication or what, but I could feel it going in. It was this really intense pressure in my hand where the IV was, and there was this cold, burning feel. That sounds so weird, but it was cold and burning at the same time. And that was really that I would say was the most painful thing I felt that day. So yeah, that was uncomfortable, but after that I was ready to get wheeled into surgery. So the surgery I got done is called an STT fusion, and that involves, I can't easily point, so I've got a little chopstick here. The surgeon removes a graft of bone from the arm bone, and he uses that to fuse together 3 bones in the area of the thumb. And at the same time, he removes the pieces of lunate, the bone that has died, that are kind of just floating around in there, causing damage to the surrounding tissue. And the goal of the procedure, I'm not going to pretend to understand why this works, but essentially by fusing the 3 bones here together, the scaphoid, the trapezium, and the trapezoid. The intent is that once I've healed and I'm, doing normal things with my wrist again, the 3 fused bones are taking on the strain and the pressure that would otherwise be on the damaged bone, the lunate. The surgery went very smoothly. It took, all told, I would say like an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes. It's a very weird sensation having surgery under nerve block because obviously the purpose of the nerve block is that you can't feel what's happening, but you do still get some sensations. Like when they were moving my arm, I could feel a tugging. Like if they're tugging on my arm, I could feel the pulling in my shoulder. And also at points when they were chiseling with the hammer to get the bone off of my radius, the arm bone, I could feel that, like the kind of thump, thump, thump. It was radiating up my body. And a similar thing with when they were screwing in wires to hold my wrist in place while it heals. The vibrations of the drill were traveling up my arm and into my shoulder, so I could feel and hear that drilling was happening. But otherwise, I was totally comfortable. It didn't bother me at all. I didn't actually even know surgery had started, so they had a curtain up so that I couldn't see what was going on with my arm. And I didn't realize they had actually started until I heard the surgeon say to the fellow who's studying under him something to the effect of, "This is the nerve," or "We don't cut the nerve," or, something indicating that they had sliced into me and were looking at one of my nerves. So that kind of clued me in. I was like, oh, wow, surgery has started. I didn't even realize. The surgery was really uneventful from my point of view. I had gone in with my phone and a pair of headphones so that I could listen to music while it was going on. But I never ended up actually plugging the headphones in and listening to anything. I just kind of laid there and listened to what the surgeons were saying to each other. Other than the hammering and the drilling, the only other time I felt anything was at one point I could feel a really intense squeezing around my upper arm. And I asked the surgeon, is it normal to feel like my upper arm is being squeezed really hard? And he and the fellow just kind of laughed and they went, well, yes, your arm is being squeezed. There's a tourniquet around it. So yeah, normal to feel squeezing. That was the only discomfort I felt during the surgery. So overall, I was really happy with the nerve block and really happy with how the surgery went. So yeah, they did the surgery. Like I said, it took maybe an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. They got me all wrapped up in this horribly awkward cast, which you can't see because I'm wearing a shirt, but the cast goes all the way around the elbow to just past my elbow. So my arm during healing is stuck with the elbow at a right angle and the wrist in a straight position for healing. The cast is very heavy, very uncomfortable. I believe I will have it on for about another week and a half or 2 weeks, at which point the surgeon will remove it, we'll see how the healing is going, and he'll put on a much lighter cast that doesn't totally encase my fingers as they are now. So that's it for today's video. I will post again in a few days talking about how my post-op went, how healing has been going, and how pain management has been. So until then, I hope you all have a great Christmas, happy holidays, and a happy new year, and stay safe.